All right, we're going to get started. Good morning. My name is Marty Schindler, and to make sure everybody's awake, my usual routine is to say, I want you to say, good morning, Marty. But we'll try it anyway. There's not a lot of people in here, so I'll say it again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Marty.
There we go. And that usually helps, you know. People pay attention, and we have a lot of good things to say and hear and learn about today. This is Future of TV. Wall Street analysts meet industry executives. It's all about innovation and disruption moving into the next wave. I'm going to encourage everybody to take a moment later on, if you haven't done it already, or do it while we're talking, looking at the topic description. It'll put into context some of the many things that we're going to talk about today. But since you all know how to read, what we're going to do is start out. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to take a moment, say who they are, what they do, and how it applies to the topic. We're going to start at the far end in alphabetical order with Darren Cross. If you would, please. Good morning.
Hi, it's early. Darren Cross. Most recently, I was a VP of Corporate Strategy and Biz Dev at Maker Studios, owned and ultimately buried by Disney. So what I do now is I'm a consultant working with internet and new media companies, strategy, finance, other things, primarily in video and social. So I'm working with folks like Jukin, Unreal.co, and companies like that.
Thank you. And to his right, Justin Liu of Akamai.
Hi, my name is Justin Liu. I work as a service line manager for Akamai Technologies. I lead a group of technical advisors and consultants for digital media and gaming. What that means is we support a lot of our customers in the content prep, content delivery, and analytics for large sports events like the Super Bowl, on-demand content, as well as major game releases. In the past, I've also worked for Panasonic Avionics and helped with the streaming and system integration of all the in-flight entertainment movies that we watch on the plane.
Thank you. And to his right, Larry Namer.
Hi, Larry Namer. Here in the U.S., known for being the founder of E! Entertainment Television, but these days I'm in Asia, all over Asia now, doing content, literally any kind of distribution platform that makes sense for certain projects. So.
And to his right, Mr. Michael Pachter.
Hi, Michael Pachter. I'm a stock market analyst for Wedbush Securities here in LA. I cover broadly entertainment media that's delivered digitally. So I cover video games, music, and film distribution digitally, so Netflix, that type of stuff. And Marty has me here because I bring up the average age of the panel.
For which we're very thankful, by the way, and the audience is kind of reflecting that too, I think. My name is Marty Schindler, CEO of the Schindler Perspective, which is a husband and wife consulting team. I'm the husband side of that. Between us, we have a Big Four professional service firm, top 5 business school background, additional experience at companies such as Fox, MGM, Industrial Light and Magic, Kodak, Cinesite, and Bank of America. Through the years, we've worked at most of the points on the horizontal value chain within entertainment and entertainment technology, and a significant number of the verticals that cross that horizontal path. So we've got a wide blend of background and experience and help a wide variety of small to medium-sized companies. So we're going to get started. We're going to leave time for Q&A, Q from you, A from us, as we move forward, because that's something a lot of panels don't leave time for. Even though this is called Future of TV, I want to take a moment. I'm going to ask about radio. Now, why would he do that? Well, radio's been in the news a lot recently. It is a sophisticated, mature technology, and it's been around for a long time. It's good for entertainment. It's good for a lot of other things that we do. But with the recent natural disasters that have been out there, there have been a number of periodic stories about the importance of radio for distributing important information, especially if cell towers are down. So just, it's not something that we talked about ahead of time, but where do you see radio today in the whole scheme of entertainment technology? Is it still a viable option? And where is it going to be a year from now or 5 years from now?
Your question, I think it's topical only because radio, which people think of clearly as old technology, is broadcast. And broadcast means one direction, so the user doesn't interact. You can change the station, but you don't get to select what's coming up. I see a migration of radio the same way we've seen a migration of filmed content to user interaction, and the user gets to pick what they listen to. So we all know about Spotify and Napster and Apple Music, but Pandora Radio, where you actually create a station and you can actually tweak it so you get content that you're interested in getting. And I actually think that that's behind the Sirius XM, which is broadcast satellite, investment in Pandora. I think that you're seeing a migration from pure broadcast to interaction. I don't think broadcast goes away. You're right. I mean, it's a stable technology and it can survive, the power outage if people have a little portable radio with batteries. It's not going to go away, but I think it lessens in importance as more consumer dollars go toward an interactive experience.
And I probably never would have brought it up if it wasn't for all the comments during the 3 or 4 major disasters that we've been in, and I think it's particularly NAB that has brought it up, saying, you know what, station whatever, I'm going to say XYZ, and don't take me literally, although there probably is a W or a K XYZ, that really brought a lot of help to a lot of people because those towers don't go down as easily. Anybody else have a comment about it?
Specifically on that, no, but I think radio, it moves a little bit. So to Michael's point, not only music, but there's also, podcasting is incredibly popular, and that, for all intents and purposes, is really radio, right? It's talking without images, and that's what radio is. So I don't see it going anywhere. I think right now, if anything, the internet is video heavy. I can't go through a page anywhere to get information that I think I can get in a quick, concise way. It's often called writing. But I have to sit through 2 minutes of video with exposition and God knows what just to get the granule that I want, right? And I think that's not efficient. And I think, so for some cases, I want to sit back and watch a video. Some cases, I want to listen to a long conversation. In some cases, I want to grab information quickly as I can determine within a written article.
I'm surprised on that podcast.
Introduce yourself for a second.
I'm Gene Munster, and I'm a venture capitalist and covering kind of future tech, which includes AI, robotics, AR, VR, and kind of everything that's going on in content. My old career, I was a stock analyst and kind of covered a lot of these themes too. But as part of that, did work on what is going on with podcasts. So when the question came up, that was my first thought was, we can kind of do this with podcasts today, but the problem is that takes a little bit of effort to put the podcast together. When you talk to publishers, the growth that they see in audio content is significantly greater than the growth, not surprising, in their broader audience. We have just a nascent publishing site where we do like 3 research notes a week, but we offer some of those in audio format. And I'm surprised at how often people use that. My point is this, is I think radio could be cracked in a different way if someone was able to kind of make it easier for us to consume the podcast content.
Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of user trends, where we're going with radio, Spotify, podcasts are exactly where my head went. But speaking to where using it for natural disaster, hurricanes, earthquakes, whatever else we might see, I think this is where, like video, we're going to have, at least in the foreseeable future, 2 architectures. Something where if there's a major disaster, you're going to know to tune into the radio for now, right? If cell towers are down, you realize, you know what, to get this information, I need to look at a different path. So I think those large antennas are going to be here to stay for at least the foreseeable future, but user trends on a day-to-day basis will go further away from that.
Before we move on, I, for one, would like to see the FM chip in all of our phones activated. That's something that is in most phones. The carriers have been a little reluctant to do it. As part of full disclosure, I'll even admit to being a guy who bought a Zune. And when everyone else was buying iPods, I bought a Zune because not only did it give me access to my music, but it also gave me access to FM, which Actually, in a decent pair of headsets, FM can sound really very good.
Marty, does it still work? Do you still have your Zune?
No, no.
I was
Can
gonna
I tell
buy
you a
it
cute
from you.
Zune anecdote?
You see, I knew I was going to get made fun of.
So
but
among the things I cover is video games, and the Microsoft guys they're on my mailing list. They frequently ask me questions about Xbox and Xbox Live. And one day back in 2003 or 4, they said, "Do you have a current Zune forecast?" And I wrote back, "What's a Zune?" And I was kidding. I just wrote, "What's a Zune?" ? And they sent me back 4 paragraphs explaining what a Zune was. So industry analysts, and they believed that I actually didn't know what it was. And I mean, that just tells you how popular. So just in case you guys don't remember the Zune, it was like a little MP3 player that was pretty crappy.
yeah, I transferred everything that was on that off and, just gave it up. It was not as light as an iPod. It was more like a brick. Remember your first, but it worked. Anyway, I can be made fun of, it's okay. So let's move on to TV and underserved areas. Also going on with the storm, Google had Project Loon for some time to bring internet and theoretically TV content to underserved areas of the world. Due to the recent natural disasters, they have floated their balloons under an experimental FCC license to bring LTE coverage to Puerto Rico. While great in concept, Google's Loon and similar projects from Facebook and others, it does not seem to be widespread yet, meaning Facebook's drone capability, Google's Loon. But will this turn into something better than cell and Wi-Fi service for helping underserved areas, or is it just a big experiment that sounds good?
I think it's an experiment that sounds good. I think that those underserved areas do need to be served. I mean, the gap, obviously, this group is well aware of the benefits that connected youth have versus ones that aren't connected. So I think that they will pursue that through like internet.org, and other organizations want to really promote that along with the big companies. What's really going to matter is 5G. And just like we said, 4G a few 5-10 years ago, and 3G 15 years ago, or it's pretty exciting to hear about what those data speeds are and what new experiences we can have. To me, that's what's more important.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. I think this is just a Band-Aid. It's an interim to.
Move a little closer to the
I
microphone.
think it's a Band-Aid and it's an interim to what's to come.
Okay. As long as Gene brought up 5G, I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure. We are in a wired society, at least here in North America, with cable, broadband, and less significantly DSL dominating the market. There's a major trend going on towards cell phone only. It's in the high teens, low 20% range right now of households that are not broadband but are cell phone only. And it's probably going to increase with 5Gs. On top of that, to make that happen, there have been more and more space launches of communication satellites. On Monday of this week, SpaceX put up 10 Iridium satellites for further communication. SpaceX had another launch this morning, or supposedly. This was a little early even for me to check. Do you know if anybody know if that went off this morning? Anybody? We don't know one way or another. But they were twice this week. They were set to launch more communication satellites. So that's.
Sorry. What is SpaceX?
What is SpaceX?
Yeah.
SpaceX is. You're serious.
It's a private company.
It's a private company run by Elon Musk to transport, put up satellites. They've done a number of missions to the International Space Station, and within the next year or so, they're going to do, manned missions to the space station. Excuse me on that. So anyway, with 5G on the horizon, is this really going to make a big difference? You only alluded to it for a moment there, Gene, but will 5G make a big difference as we look forward?
It will, for the simple reason that speed matters. A couple weeks ago, I was at a 5G industry, or a networking industry conference, and obviously everything's about 5G and what's the timing of it and when's it going to be rolled out. The answer is it probably starts in 2019, and then it's kind of a rolling rollout. And I think most people will probably have it by 2021, something like that in the US. But the data speeds, the way they describe it is you can download a typical standard def movie, which is about 2.5 gigs in about 10 seconds. So right now that would probably take a few minutes, 5 minutes. So what does that mean is that there's just new experiences that you can have, just not only getting things quicker, but we're really big on this whole augmented reality theme and eventually wearables and taking the real world and interlacing it with the virtual world, so you look around and different things are overlaid, people's names, for example. You could try to fix something and there could be things overlaid onto it. But in order to do that, you need just wicked fast data speeds, and that's what 5G does. So maybe to put it in a nutshell is 5G will open up new computing paradigms.
Yeah, I think building off of that, 5G is important because of the speeds, but also something that's not as highlighted is the fact that it has a lot more capacity. So when we think about all the 4G networks we're on now, all the connected devices that are coming out, even at home, you're looking at your router, you're looking at how that can connect. If we're all at the airport, your 4G connection starts to slow down. 5G, as you build it out, it has a lot more capacity to support all these devices. So when we're talking about higher speeds, but with, is it whether or not it's your wearables, if it's your Internet of Things, your refrigerator, all of it can be connected to 5G at a high speed and not have that same degradation of quality that you have now with the 4G when you have that huge concentration. And I think that will help with the reach across the board.
I agree with both those points, but I think as far as the first part of your question about, you alluded to the home phone versus mobile phones, I think the home phone leaving your home has more to do with demographics and the group of people that use those devices than it does the technology. So I think as, well, we're all getting older here, right? So I haven't had a home phone since 1998. Well, 1 year when my son was born, my wife was very nervous about that. But no other reason, right? My parents couldn't imagine not having a home phone, even if they only use it twice a week. You know, they gotta have a home phone. So I think it's kind of more of a mindset of an age group than technology driven for that particular aspect.
Let's ask the audience, how many people have a home phone? Still using it? Pardon me?
Actually plug in.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, we have VoIP. So.
Well, that counts as home phone versus cell phone only because you can't take it with you in the same way. Let's ask a couple other questions. How many people are corded when it comes to TV? Still corded. Okay.
As in cable, you mean?
Yeah. Okay. How many people have been cord cutters and used skinny bundles? So almost. Okay. John. How many people subscribe to Netflix? Hulu? Quite a few. Both. Amazon Prime? All right. Two others. Own an Alexa? Just a few? Well, okay, good. Unanimous up here.
I have 3 of them.
3 of them.
5, baby.
They're taking over my
Every room.
house.
I got one in every bedroom.
Okay. Gene's going to mark that for his next Apple report. That
Alexa is Amazon.
and Google Home. I have Google Home.
What's wrong with you?
Actually, it's very. I think they're both pretty competitive. I like it. I find myself talking to it all the time, much to my wife's chagrin. Let's talk about TV ratings and viewer behaviors by age. You know, the recent premiere week, if there's such a thing as starting off a TV season, saw the consolidated audience for what they categorize as the 5 major networks down 11% from last year. The 18 to 49 demo was down 8%. So technology and behavior patterns continue their impact, even though traditional TV is still the #1 watched way of viewing TV. It's on a decline, but it is still a large number. In a recent Pew poll, 59% of the respondents had cable, telco, or satellite, while 28% streamed and 9% were over the air. Now, that's the total universe of what they study, but the telling numbers are 18 to 29, only 31% were corded and 61% streamed. So those numbers were almost literally reversed. What does this say about the bundle? What does this say about people like Jeffrey Katzenberg trying to raise $2 billion for short-form content. Snap has a lock on that younger demo at the moment, but others will probably be able to break in. What does this say about the kind of content that's coming over streaming services right now? Short form, long form, just about anything?
You know, I think your question's missing an important element, which is that the streaming services have become a close substitute for corded content and at a much, much, much lower price. So you can be a Hulu, Amazon, and Netflix subscriber for about $30 a month. You can have all three, and you can cut the cord for about $85 a month, and you get a lot of content. I mean, you get almost all of it. You don't get sporting content, you don't get live events. But short of that, you might have to wait a week to get Hulu content, and you have to wait at the end of the season to get Netflix. But the content owners are fucking up massively by allowing this to happen, because they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they're going from an $85 customer to a $30 customer. And I think Disney, Darren and I were talking about this, Disney, I think, finally woke a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago. NBC looks like they're waking up to this. CBS has no clue what they're doing, but with All Access, they have the potential to yank their content from the other services and perhaps go standalone. I don't think standalone is a solution either, but the cable ecosystem generates more profit than Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon combined for the content owners, and they're giving up that profit because they're not very smart. So I actually think that matters much, much more than the development of originals. If these things all become HBO, then it's a supplement, and who cares? We'll get them because we want the original content. If they become a substitute rather than a supplement, then I think the content owners are in trouble, and I think in 5 years, half of us will raise our hands for being courted, and in 10 years, none of us will raise our hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of the reason why CBS, for example, is a slow mover, I mean, they probably got the oldest average age audience for primetime. So again, they've got their audience where they want them. They also own Showtime, so they have a kind of a piece in there already that competes with the Netflixes of the world, so to speak. So, but yeah, it makes total sense that Fox and Disney are going to do this, but it doesn't make total sense that they would want to do it alone. No one wants to go buy in 6 different places, and that's where it's going to head, or 12 different places. Eventually, there has to be an aggregator. They have to come together. I think what Disney has done yesterday with the announcement around Blu-ray, and it's kind of it's good they can do it there where the patient's already dead. But if they do it now for SVOD and bring these services together, then they could really make they could really, to Michael's, I think, joy, would take down Netflix.
Is the topic original content, or that's a little different than what we're talking about?
I answered a question he didn't ask. The
but
topic's original content.
But it fit in. He fit in just fine with what we were driving for.
That's what I felt. On the original content side, it's getting pretty exciting because now all these players, Amazon and Apple's starting to throw their hat more aggressively in the ring. So Apple, if you're keeping scores, 0 for 2 on their original content. They had Planet of the Apps, which my guess is no one here has watched, and CarPlay Karaoke, which you might have watched in a previous forum. But they've just purchased the rights to Amazing Stories. It's just an 80s TV series. It was kind of like the sci-fi, like an episode maybe.
Spielberg.
Yes.
Spielberg's going to be an executive producer on this. One example of an episode was Santa Claus gets, again, this is fictional, the real Santa Claus trips an alarm and gets arrested and thrown in jail with a bunch of drunk fake Santa Clauses. And so there's some pretty fun, entertaining things that they've done. But the part that really stuck out to me, so again, Apple just acquired the rights to Amazing Stories, is going to relaunch it. And they project a $5 million, it's rumored a $5 million per episode budget, which is similar to what a good HBO episode would cost. I don't know what Game of Thrones costs. Probably people here would definitely know that.
Yeah, not close to Game of Thrones.
15? Yeah. Okay.
But
so,
it's location.
So not quite, or maybe a long ways away from some of the really, really good stuff. But the point is that's starting to add up now. And I think Apple's going to spend about $1 billion this year. I suspect that, which is well below the $8 billion for Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix is probably 4 on original content, 3.5 to 4, but because they have to license a lot of shit.
Okay.
Yes.
So 3, that's the real number,
Yeah.
3.5 to 4. But that's going to inch up. I bet that it's going to be at parity with Netflix in 5 years.
Sure.
You know, you brought up Apple and amazing stories. I had a note to bring up that on the cover of the Hollywood Reporter several weeks ago, there was a picture of Jennifer Aniston, and the caption that said, Jennifer Aniston and Steven Spielberg are salivating, keyword, salivating, to be the first to make a deal with Hollywood, with Apple, excuse me. And I was going to bring that up today until I heard the news yesterday. Do you think you think they were salivating? Do you think others in Hollywood are anxious to do that deal with Apple? Steven's got his. You know, we've learned, I think, from Hulu and from Netflix and from Amazon that people will grab that paycheck wherever there's a good paycheck to come from.
On the salivating side, John Landgraf of FX has a pretty famous presentation he's made twice this year, so February and I think June, that the number of scripted shows, I think it was 2007, but 10 or 12 years ago, was 150. And the number my number that are good are probably 30. So probably 20% are shows that play multiple seasons. Now that number's up to 450. And so I would say, in fairness, the number of shows that are good is probably 20%, 90. And people are salivating because they want that number to go to 540 and 600 and 800 and 900. The problem is there's going to be a lot of bad ones, and that means that your batting average is going to still be 20%. And there are many, many, many more players. So Facebook just announced $1 billion investment. They haven't done it yet, but they're going to spend $1 billion. I know Google's going to do it with YouTube Red. There's going to be plenty of places if you're a creator to sell your content. And all that means is if you have good content, the price is going to get bid up. So it's a great environment for creators. What do you do as a consumer? And I mean, the Akamai guys can probably tell you what you do as a consumer, how they're going to help you find it. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Larry?
Yeah, as a content creator, life couldn't be better. Everybody, the conversation has been very U.S.-centric so far, but for a person like me who loves to produce outside of the country, it's really become so now that Netflix and everybody in the world, as they expand internationally, they're looking for local content. So we're actually involved in producing content for the Middle East, for Southeast Asia, and stuff developmental for U.S. companies that are in that space. So there's actually more demand for us to create than we have capacity to create at this point.
And do you think that is taking the place in a good way of content coming from here?
I think
native content?
For us, we're an odd animal in that we're a Hollywood company that specializes in doing stuff out of the country. So when people look to develop new things out of the country, they typically come to us either for the development or consulting on it. So we're bringing Hollywood-style programming, that sensibility, and then the capability of localizing it to whatever area we're developing. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and let me ask the audience 2 questions. I'm speaking to one of your questions earlier about the demographics of cord cutting and original content. So for the folks here outside of maybe sports and Game of Thrones, who actually schedules time in which they watch their favorite show or top 3 shows every week? Okay.
We define as schedule time?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock.
Watch it when it's
appointment
favorite
time.
show. Yeah,
Appointment
just
time.
watch it when it airs.
Well, after the VCR came out, the DVR, you don't have to stay up till 10 o'clock on Tuesday night. It's recorded.
Yeah. And I guess kind of a follow-up to that, in terms of new original content, how many people actually watch that when it first airs versus hearing it from one source to another, then going back and watching it now? Okay, kind of a mixed crowd. So I mean, my point there being is that as you produce original content, and users are now not really watching it live. If you're, there's a lot of marketing and advertising about a new show, then you might get that initial boom of viewers that first time around, but now you're seeing that second or third or fourth wave of viewers where they've heard from reviews, heard from friends of this new series, and you can binge watch. And so as an original content owner, you don't need to knock it out of the park that first day when you air it for the very first time ever. Now you have that opportunity and window further down the road to have original content, but still be successful, have that cult following if that's kind of what you're going for, and it's a good opportunity for original content production.
From the time point of view, DVRs are only at a 50% penetration. It's just been hovering at that level for a number of years now. That's the good news. The bad news is you can catch it on demand, a lot of those shows, but you got to watch through all the commercials for a lot of those same shows on demand. Esports. It's a category that's had a lot of press lately for video game tournaments. Nielsen put out an announcement today that sponsorships are increasing. Monday, Hulu ordered 4 new esports series. Where is this going to grow? Where is it going to peak out? Is it a niche audience? I know Michael's got an opinion on it because we've discussed that a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I actually know a lot about it. Today it's a niche audience. I mean, it's a largely under 25-year-old male audience. In 25 years, it'll be an under 50-year-old male audience, and probably a lot of women will join their ranks. It's probably 90% male right now, but it's growing. Women are starting to watch. I have to say, the analogy is to watching golf. So if you don't golf, you probably don't watch golf. It just makes no sense to you. Different from football. Most of us didn't play football and we watch it, and I'm still not sure why, but we do because our parents did or something. We did it with our dad. But golf is what esports is, I think. So if you play League of Legends, it's actually super fun to watch, and you get what's going on. They do enhance it. There's a commentator, and the commentators are just like having John Madden back in the day, Tony Romo now, as a commentator telling you as the play develops what's going on. That's fun, but try watching golf with somebody telling you he pulled out a 7-iron and you don't know what a 7-iron is. Not fun. So I think that we're going to need esports that are created from a viewer perspective. So games that are made because they're fun to watch, easy to understand. Something that's right now really big in Asia is called Player Unknown Battleground, the abbreviation PUBG. It's had 1 million concurrent players and more than 1 million concurrent views. And it's 100 people, each gamer is a person. You parachute onto an island, a fog on the island makes the playing area smaller and smaller over time, and it's a death match, last man standing. So your goal is shoot anything you see. And it's super easy to watch. It's really, really easy to watch, and it's fun to watch. And you can kill people any way you want. You can pick up a metal cast iron skillet and hit them over the head. Or you can shoot their gas tank and their car will explode. And there's plenty of ways to kill people. But it's fun to watch, and it's actually hilarious to watch. And you watch people get in a car and drive off a cliff accidentally because somebody shot out their tire. So again, that's easy. You don't have to play shooter games to watch that. It's hard to create a game. I mean, I defy you, all of you, go to Twitch today and watch Overwatch, and then write a report on what you saw because you won't know what you're looking at.
Do like traditional sports need to be concerned about? Does NFL owners, Major League Baseball owners need to be thinking about? Obviously, they're thinking about this, but is this going to be one of those generational things where actual humans playing a sport isn't going to be as appealing in 20 years?
I think it's a different, look, watching sports, if you just watch sports as a purist, you appreciate how good the athletes are. So like I watch basketball, it blows me away what physical specimens those people are, men and women. And I appreciate it, and I can watch esports. And if I've played the game, I'm just amazed how good the players are. It really blows you away. So I think it will divide the audience. It's just like this dilemma with 450 scripted shows. There's less time to watch 2.5 Men. And if you're watching 40 or 50 hours a month of Netflix, you're probably not watching the same 150 hours of broadcast television. So that drops. So I do think it will cut into it. I don't think it makes football unpopular. I mean, I have girls, so my daughters don't watch football with me, but I watched it with my dad every weekend. If I had sons, I'd watch pro football with my boys every weekend. So I think that'll persist. I'm not sure that minor sports, women's sports, are going to be tough. And sports like tennis and golf might not have, and bowling, might not have the audience because gamers probably aren't taking up golf or tennis. They're probably playing games full time. That meme that gamers are these nerds who sit in the basement and play games, 17 hours a day and that's it, that's a real thing. I mean, there really are a lot of those guys out there. Fortunately, they're also cybersecurity experts, and they're keeping our country safe.
Larry?
Yeah, just real quickly, just the way it's going. We're actually, one of the clients we picked up recently in a consulting capacity is one of the largest gaming companies in the world that has us working with their developers while they're developing games to understand how TV folks would actually translate it into esports.
So that's
so
brilliant.
They're looking at that, now, and they're bringing in people to help them develop, knowing that a lot of people are going to be watching it as opposed to playing it, or both.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the overlap is coming in from traditional sports with esports. I mean, if you look at League of Legends, one of the most popular games out there, their championship game has more viewers online than the World Series right now. Now, that's also because you can only watch it online, and not many traditional broadcast stations are actually airing it. So there are eyeballs to these events, right?
Eyeballs are eyeballs.
Eyeballs are eyeballs, and these top athletes are making actually tons of money. You have 18, 19-year-old kids who are maybe getting a scholarship, maybe still in college. They're not getting paid like an NBA star, but you're talking pretty commonly finding teams that get multi-million-dollar pots winning first place.
The winning League of Legends team last year, the guarantee for the top 4 guys was $2 million apiece, and they got a piece of their prize pool, which is giant. And there's a game called Dota, DOTA 2. Prize pools are now in the teens of millions of dollars, and the players get a big chunk of that. So yeah, you can make millions.
What's the status with the formal leagues around esports?
I mean, there actually are. There have been formal leagues around StarCraft in Korea for 15 years. Activision's starting up something called Overwatch League. There are now 12 teams that have teams. The minimum they can pay is $50,000. Their exhibition season starts in the old Burbank studios where The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was filmed on December 6th, and the formal competition starts in January.
So it's prize money versus salaried?
There will, nobody knows where the prize money is coming from. There'll be sponsorships. Activision will put some money in, but I doubt there'll be much money. They're hoping to build an audience. Overwatch has about 30 million cumulative players. So again, like golf, I mean, they might get a golf audience. I doubt they're going to get 10 million people watching. And League of Legends, I think the League of Legends World Championships had 22 million uniques. So, not all concurrent, but 22 million unique viewers, which is a really huge number for one game.
And building off of League of Legends, just because they have the strongest following in terms of esports and sponsored athletes. I mean, even Robert Kraft of the Patriots, he's purchased a League of Legends team.
And he is an Overwatch League team owner as well.
And he has an Overwatch League team, and if you look at the players now, similarly, they're sponsored. You can see what chairs they use, what mice they use, what their favorite headphones are. It's it's an advantage in the game, and as a player, it's it's fairly low barrier to entry. That you have sports players, basketball stars, Steph Curry and what he did to Under Armour and their shoe base. You can look at other star players, and maybe if you're buying those headphones, those seats, it's not that expensive.
But Viagra and Chevy trucks aren't going to be advertising in esports for anytime soon.
Still on football.
So Larry, Michael mentioned, watching the NBA games before, and the other day, the Warriors played the Timberwolves in Shanghai. The NFL did a 3-year deal to stream Thursday, Sunday, and Monday night games. Now, basketball I know has been popular in China for a long time. Is that going to grow as a sports and TV medium, and what about the NFL?
Well, I think basketball is a no-brainer. I mean, now a lot of the kind of, I don't know if you call them secondary leagues or supplemental, like Drew League and stuff, are now making their way into China because the appetite for basketball is not totally satisfied by the NBA yet. When you get to other sports, I have my doubts about NFL. I think if you really look at when basketball took off, there was when Chinese began having players in the NBA like Yao Ming. I think you'll see baseball probably be more important in China than football for the short term.
Without let me just try to make somewhat of an analogy. Baseball is actually very popular in Japan and it's very popular in Korea. So is that partly why you say that will be popular in China?
I think, you know, first of all, you just look at physical stature of people. In general, Chinese are smaller. You're not going to find 300-pound Chinese linemen soon. You may find a kicker, which could be a breakthrough. But for baseball, I mean, there is a history throughout Asia. It's an easier game to learn, I think, and I think you'll see some Chinese players really become more popular, make the game more popular in China. Football, I just think, probably is not going to be very popular there, at least in the next decade.
And that kind of goes along with what Michael made a comment about earlier. If it's not a sport you played, you may not want to be watching it, even though a lot of us still watch football.
Yeah, I mean, there are no Chinese players. There's no outlook for Chinese players. The rules of American football are very confusing to most people around the world, and even to the point of why we call it football when you don't really use your foot. So I just don't see it for NFL there.
And I think it's getting dicier and dicier as you're looking at the NFL. And I mean, they have enough negative press in the States with concussions. And if you look at players now retiring at 25 years old, I mean, they're still in their physical prime. So it's already, I think, having an impact in the U.S. And yeah, as you talk about other countries, if one, stature is one thing, as well as just ease to play the game. I mean, I think that's where soccer or football everywhere else, it's easy because you can just have a ball and you can start playing. Similar with basketball, not that hard as long as you have a hoop. Getting football, it's technically not that tough, but getting 14 guys to get a proper game going on, and the football, the rules, it's going to be harder to get that attraction to the game internationally, I think.
I agree with all that, except for perhaps the size. And my wife is Chinese. Her father's 6'4". I've traveled in China a fair bit. In northern China, particularly, there's a lot of pretty big dudes. And not just tall, thick.
So while we're on the topic of sports, still a major part of watching TV, however you get your TV, and most of the skinny bundles have sports included, although Discover is attempting to put together a skinny bundle with Hallmark and a couple of others that will not have sports in it and do it at a lower price. But there's a whole bunch of sports rights contracts coming up in the early 20s. With the amount of money in the streaming that the likes of Amazon, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Apple have done or will be doing in terms of sports, and with the amount of cash that those companies have, how likely is it that one of them will really make a complete bid to outbid NBC or CBS or ABC, ESPN for some of those, say, football rights, and really change the sport, or not change it? What's the likelihood of that event happening, of one of those major companies buying it out?
Because I'm more of a tech person, I tend to give the tech companies maybe more credit than they deserve. But I'm a believer that they will put the hammer down, and it's a high probability that someone makes a statement in the next few years. I'm surprised that the statements so far have been pretty muted. Thursday Night Football with Amazon Prime, I was watching that last week and was surprised at just the quality of the stream itself was impressive. But the point is, these companies are serious about content. They know the importance of live sports, and they're going to make a play.
And Gene knows more about Apple probably than, well, for sure everybody in this room, but I would say anybody alive. So I'm going to talk out of turn here. Apple, once Congress gets their shit together and allows repatriation of foreign capital, Apple's going to have tens of billions of dollars at their disposal to spend domestically. I think they're the bidder, and I think they will go after the NFL. And that suddenly makes Apple television a real thing, that there's some content. Disney, I think, has to bid. I don't think they have a choice. And they're the guys who pioneered moving that content off of broadcast and onto ESPN. So, we saw them take primetime content, put on ESPN. Fox has to bid. So I think the guy who loses is CBS. I think CBS may lose their half. The NFL's not stupid. They don't want content to go to one bidder. So that's why right now NBC has Sunday night football. Sunday night. CBS has Sunday games. Fox has Sunday games. ESPN has Monday night football. So you've got 4 different entities right now paying, plus Amazon and Yahoo the year before on streaming. Apple's going to get some of that. I don't think the NFL's dumb enough to sell all of it to one bidder, because as the other guys go out of business, then the NFL is now leveraged to one bidder. So, but Apple, I am certain Apple will be a player. And then
I agree.
God knows what Bezos will do to respond.
I agree, but I have more of a grassy knoll kind of theory about it, that Apple will buy Disney with that money, which will, of course, have to buy the sports that Michael referred to.
That would be great.
One of many rumors that's out there, and then Disney buying Netflix is the other rumor that's always been out there.
I don't know why you do that, actually, but Michael.
Well, it's only $90 billion. I mean, pass on Time Warner for 84, and you can buy Netflix for 90. You get so much more original content there.
But you almost could say, given your commentary about Apple, that they would be salivating to get some of those sport rights.
Yeah.
Given our commentary
and again,
earlier today.
It's free money. I mean, honestly, they're sitting on a boatload of cash. I don't even know the number anymore. Is it
$260 billion.
Yeah. And so it's like to write and these NFL contracts are literally like single digit, $1 billion.
Yeah.
So for them to say 5, 10, the NFL's going to go, okay.
So if that transition happens, Justin, is the infrastructure capable of handling it all? It all goes to streaming?
Yeah, I think this is where technology is always scaled to the users and try and get the best experience out there. We already support a lot of that streaming today. We're always building ahead as as a technology. There's different avenues of how you do it, and kind of ahead of where the demand is now. As we're looking, I think, even further out at getting these rights done. As we look at 5G, ATSC 3.0, combine that with just how I think all these infrastructures are scaling out, using, I hate to use the word cloud, but I mean, as everything is moving to the cloud, and that can mean so many different things. You have all these options of having that capacity. It'd be good for, I think, all the end users. The demographics just making it easier to watch and more accessible.
Is the number of viewers that stream the Super Bowl a good indicator of people wanting to do that?
The Super Bowl is usually a pretty good indicator of number of concurrent users, people watching. I mean, it'll still be very heavy in terms of people watching on TV still for Super Bowl. Another good indicator are the Olympics. Last year we had the Summer Olympics coming up now. In a few months we have the Winter Olympics, and especially when you combine it with South Korea and how advanced they are in technology, they're trying to at least pave the way for that next wave of technology, right? They're trying to get to that next standard of television and broadcast and getting their networks ready when their wireless networks, their home networks are already very well connected. So something like that will help push the envelope further for the rest of the rest of geographies and demographics.
So in terms of watching all that, one of the reasons that is attributed to why the NFL, for example, up until this season has done so well in terms of its ratings is the HD TV has made a big difference and made the viewing experience significantly better. So in the last 10 years, we've gone from CRTs to 720p to 1080p, and now to a certain extent, 4K UHD TVs, and many of them with HDR. There's a large installed base in the market, but the next gen does have all those capabilities. It has all the smart TV tools to it. What will it take to get that next round of purchases done that will really rotate things through? I mean, people went from one HD TV to a second to a third, and now there is that installed base, and people might be reluctant to get out and get rid of that old one that still plays pretty nicely. A 720 is still adequate. It's not 4K. You cover Best Buy. They're probably, I think you still do, a beneficiary.
Until they're gone.
And I'm not picking on any one company, but what is going to drive that next generation of hardware?
Well, Gene actually brought this up right at the beginning, 5G. Right now, the over-the-air broadcast standard really doesn't support 4K and
Yep.
really isn't likely to. Internet can, and so whether it's wired or wireless internet, that 2.5 gigabyte movie he was talking about is something like 8 or 9 gigabytes in 4K, and it's that you need super high speed
Yeah.
to stream that,
Yeah.
and that's going to happen. I mean, so I think coincident with your timeline, which is probably right, 2019 to 2021, as we build out 5G, our internet connections are going to change, and we're going to get over-the-top TV that delivers 4K. And so the question is just, who's going to be the content, aggregator? Is it going to be conventional cable broadcast over the internet? Is it going to be AT&T Uverse? Or is it going to be somebody else? Is it going to be the standalone Disney Channel on the internet?
Yeah, and who's ready to invest and have that come out? I mean, you mentioned a UHD movie file today is actually close to like 300 gigs, which is huge. I mean,
Yeah, it's giant.
most phones in this room may not even be able to store that just as your only content. That takes, if you're lucky, that's going to take you less than 3 hours, right? That can take overnight. That's talking about current 4G. It's already tough. Current, cable modems. If you're talking about fiber, it's going to help. But yeah, 5G is really where it's going to jump a whole magnitude faster and actually enable you to download that within reasonable time frames. Or, if you don't store that locally, at least you can actually stream those chunks.
Right.
And so you may not have to store it locally, but you need that speed to keep up. As we're talking about 5G and the massive speed that it will have, it'll actually enable you to stream that type of content.
So the panel here is has 3 people who are kind of building the future and 2 people who are trying to observe and predict the future. So Michael and I are on the observation prediction side. And
I've never built anything in my life,
me either.
including a bookshelf or a wine cabinet.
As someone who, like Michael, is predicting the future, we kind of have a scorecard that we keep in our heads about stuff we get right and stuff we get wrong. My biggest black mark on my scorecard is about Apple and what they're doing in TV. And I believed for a long time that they were going to build a TV set. And really crack, when we're talking about data speeds and we're talking about quality of the TV and the image, but there still needs to be something bigger that needs to happen with the TV. And specifically, it's cobbled together. We have a box, a Roku box, Apple TV, Fire TV, that attaches to your display. But I still think, to answer the question about where the TV needs to go and an opportunity, is for someone to really do it right. I've given up that Apple's going to do it. There are times when I think that they will do it, but I've just too big of a black mark for me to go there. But can say that the TV still hasn't been cracked more broadly.
And
it's been so commoditized, though. TV.
I'll give you guys a shopping experience. There's a brand called Element, made in South Carolina, solely to suck up to Trump. But Amazon has an Amazon Fire TV Element 4K television on sale. Came out in June, I believe. And the 55 inches $649, and the 65 inches $899 with Fire TV built in. So you literally turn the TV on, and it's essentially got an Apple TV box built into the television, and it's 4K, and it's under $1,000 for 65 inch, and it's made in the United States. So if you're looking for one, I would actually recommend you get that one. It might not be dependable, but you're supporting the economy. And
I think that's a leap forward. What Michael described, leap forward. Element TV, wasn't aware of it. Major leap forward. I think the 2 leaps forward when we talk about more broadly cracking the code around TV is just, it's this concept of that with a home assistant that is a home hub, and imagine kind of pulling your digital assistant, your Alexa, your Siri kind of all together in that.
So how, given what you're saying, what you're really saying is AI built in with the Google Home and Alexa. So how else will AI change some of the way we watch TV? Or there's an LA company that's been talking about using AI to help decide what content to actually make.
So just maybe taking a left turn here on the conversation, a little bit about artificial intelligence. It's an overused term, but want to demystify it for a minute. There are 3 basic areas of artificial intelligence. artificial narrow intelligence, which has been around. I like to think that it started in 1997 when Watson won in chess, beat a human in chess, IBM Watson. And that's artificial narrow intelligence is everywhere today. Think of dynamic cruise control on a car can monitor the difference distance between yourself and the car in front of you. Then there's artificial general intelligence, which we're not at today. And that's when a machine is the same intelligence as a human. What Marty was describing is closer to this kind of nirvana, is closer to artificial general intelligence. Most loosely defined experts think we're 20 years away from that. And then after that, we hit this what's referred to as a tripwire, which there's exponential learning from the machine, and we hit artificial superintelligence. And want to give a story from Tim Urban, who I'm a huge fan of, and he has a blog called Wait But Why. So I would consider myself a student, but he gives this example of, to define artificial superintelligence. It's not speeding up this pace that we do calculations. It is a new level of abstract thinking. And the example that he gives, if you invited a chimp, which is the second most intelligent species, into a building, they would know how to get into the building, how to find a chair, sit down, and may even listen try to listen to what you're saying. But it would be impossible for the chimp to understand that the building was built by a human, and the chimp would think that it's part of nature. And that's the concept of artificial superintelligence. In the future, the humans are the chimps. And the artificial superintelligent part is going to give us insights, whether it's medicine or transportation or how to build cities, that we'll just have to take the output of it and trust that it's going to get us somewhere. So done for the sidetrack there, back to the question, bring it back to 2017, is that there is a lot that can happen around AI. Every company is going to be an AI company. And one easy way that it can impact us is through what we're seeing in digital assistants. And I think that that is a ripe area for us to improve our lives in the next few years.
So I totally agree with that, and I'm also comforted that we have a future as chimps and not batteries, so that's super good. I don't mean to degrade that at all. I totally agree with that, but it's actually kind of comforting.
Sidebar.
Yeah, I'm totally comforted by the fact, and that's not going to be the Matrix.
So from a TV point of view, Amazon is producing a lot of TV, and they sell us everything. How long before we really get from them more and more product placement? And given some of what Larry does, Larry's probably expecting this question. Larry sells shoes in China. He's got a TV show that's very, very popular. And I'm going to let you tell the rest of that and maybe relate that to what you think Amazon might or might not do.
Yeah, we've been doing, well, one of the reasons we're in Asia is that we can experiment with things very economically versus trying to do new, innovative things here where the costs are just beyond what an independent can afford to do. If you're a big media company, it's a little different. But we're into developing stories specifically for brands that have messages that are complex that you can't tell in a 30-second commercial. So we develop entire TV series for those brands. So there's product placement where you see the product in the show. The next level, we actually have a drama where a girl wears great shoes and we actually own the shoe company and we sell shoes. But now we're finding more and more where we're developing things where a brand's message is woven into the story. We don't necessarily sell anything other than selling the image of the brand and building that brand awareness. More and more you see that. I mean, we do work for a lot of the newer companies, the Amazons and stuff outside of the U.S. and stuff, and this is heavily on their mind. So we're working on a lot of that stuff.
All right, why don't we switch to some Q&A? Go ahead.
Hi, I have a question to follow what you were just saying. It used to be that the studios had an international division where they would produce for local markets, like in Germany or whatever. Do you think that now the Amazons and Netflix and all that are going to start doing that and do television series locally and just get the money wherever they can and just, I don't know if Amazon Prime exists outside of the US, but I don't know if that's where television series will be funded by these streaming.
Well, you we'll see, I mean, not we'll see, happening now, are the folks like Netflix that do have localized versions outside of the US, and they are commissioning programming specifically made for those territories. Amazon, again, growth outside of the US, not in China, so it doesn't affect us quite as directly, but just about everybody is looking at how to localize, create local versions of programming. And so, actually, that's our primary business these days.
Amazon's only in 16 countries officially. I mean, you can get it in Belgium, but they aren't there. I mean, you have to buy it from Germany. Their Prime Instant Video that is free with the Prime membership is only in 5 countries. They literally just rolled out to Canada. It'll be in 8 by year end, and India is the big one that they're rolling it out in, and they did just open a studio in India, but right now Amazon Studios are only here. Netflix has most of its original content is licensed, so Narcos is Gaumont Television, a French company with a Latin American production arm that made that show, but they're starting to build studios in Europe and in
Call My Agent, which is a French series.
don't know it, and I would bet anything they don't own it. So they license originals. So we've seen Peaky Blinders, Black Mirror, The Crown, all 3 called Netflix originals. All 3 are BBC shows that showed in the UK first, and then they licensed them. But they get it. They need to have the stuff that they own. Sure. And so it won't be Jennifer Aniston. It'll be Gerard Depardieu that is ecstatic that he's going to, yeah, exactly. Oh, it's Steven Seagal
Go ahead.
in Russia.
Streaming's happening because Handmaid's Tale just cleaned up at the Emmys, so that's going to be, a question outside, kind of technologically outside the TV box here. Gene, where are we with holographic technology? Anybody? And
Good story in the LA Times yesterday about that. Alki David is putting together a hologram location on Hollywood Boulevard. It opens November 1st. Now, I've met the man. He's a character, and that's just a good way to put it. He's also a multi-billionaire and listed recently as the 50th richest person in the UK. I had reason to do a little research not too long ago.
I'm the 50th richest person in the room.
Larry?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting, and we've been talking to Alki about certain things. I mean, bringing that kind of experience to China, of course. There's limited patents that actually are effective and work, so there's not all that much technology out there, but there's a few good companies. I'll tell you one of the things that I'm working on, kind of outside of the entertainment space, but more in the educational space. I sit on the board of the Einstein Foundation, and I'm thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great to have Einstein do the physics lectures instead of some boring professor, and I could beam them into 1,000 schools at the same time and have them speak multiple languages. So we're actually in process on that kind of stuff.
So, just a side conversation, but everyone else is okay to listen. I've seen several different holographic techniques. I thought what he had, I went to a studio a little over a year ago it's either on Cannon or Beverly Boulevard, and I came away with it exceeding my expectations on it.
Well, if you're not a producer, then it did exceed your expectations. But for me, and it's when I saw what Alki was doing and stuff, I said, boy, I could do this shit a hell of a lot better. So yeah, it's that, I think, is an experiment for technology for the sake of technology. I think you got to bring in some creative people, some people who really understand presenting visual entertainment. Like when you have characters, you have 2 characters that are both different sizes and stuff like that on the stage. It's got to come along. It needs some more brains in it, but it's happening.
Well, we're still early on. I mean, with Star Wars and Princess Leia talking to R2-D2 way back in what's now Episode 4, that was just an optical technique. That was not really a hologram, right, even though people attribute it to that. We've got time for some more questions. This gentleman here.
To dovetail onto this idea, what's the possibility of mapping, like, say, 20 years from now when we have the super intelligent
That went right over my head. I don't know if
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I'm totally not fit to answer that question.
Bioluminescence glows light, and so do television. So let's reconstruct the concept of television and map RGB signals to biological materials.
Could you put it in a paint and paint my walls with it? That would be awesome. Listen.
Well, I mean, I'm just planting the seed among you.
Yeah.
You're all pretty smart.
Lexus actually is developing new paint based off luminescence.
So I'm so sold.
Seed considered planted. This lady right here, please.
Hi, just going back to the 5G question, how likely do you think that 5G is going to displace broadband? And what does that mean for cable companies? And what do you think the timeline is on that?
I think it will replace broadband, and I think one indication is Google believes that it will. Google had a Google Fiber project where they're going and putting fiber in certain cities, and they've either just cut it all together or dramatically scaled it back. They haven't said this, but most likely is that there's just a better way to do it, and 5G is a better way to do it.
Actually, to top that off, there's a reason why Comcast and Charter have a deal that's really going under the radar. It was 6 or 9 months ago where they made a deal to be a joint venture to sell mobile service. And if you think about it, the reason they're doing that, in my opinion anyway, they're looking ahead to 5G and they know what that could happen to their broadband business. They already know what could happen to their TV and video content business. So they want to protect against that. Steve?
Yeah, does that, following what you're saying, does that make sense that these cable providers are going to shift, since they already have the telephone pole space, to go ahead and become wireless stations instead of being cable? So they
I mean, it's the reason AT&T, Uverse, and Verizon Fios are in the television business, because they were already wired as well, and they can compete with cable. And so there's no reason why T-Mobile can't do it wirelessly. I mean, anybody can be an aggregator, and all it takes is cell towers, which obviously are wired to something, but they're not wired to your house. So it's that last mile between the cell tower and your house that's prohibitively expensive to install with fiber and cable, and it's non-existent with 5G.
Fiber and cable is already there.
So
Yeah,
Apple, just
it
assume
gets
Apple
old.
takes over the world. Okay, Apple and Amazon are going to own the planet, and it was the 40th anniversary of something of Demolition Man, whatever year it was, 35th anniversary last week, and it reminded me that there was only one restaurant in that movie 50 years in the future, and it was Taco Bell. So that is where we're going. Okay, there will be only 2 corporations on the planet. It'll be Apple and Amazon. Maybe Exxon will survive, maybe, but that's it.
So with regard to all the existing cable, that evolves as well. So I have a house that's built like 45 years ago. So when we remodeled it 2 years ago, I thought I was just going to rationalize some excess cable lines. So because we had the one in the wall and the one that the previous owner put around, we had to rip them both out and put in new cable because those cables were so old they really couldn't properly service what was coming through the cable company. So in 5 or 10 years, do you want to keep doing that? So I think 5G makes a lot of sense.
And that's why you only get 6 megabits over copper now, and that's why people don't buy copper, because that wire's been in the ground for so long. Same thing, just got to move it forward 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah.
Time for another couple of questions. Did you tap one already?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you can. I'm sorry. My apologies. Be my guest.
No worries, it's early. So just one side note, Digital Domain is doing some really interesting things with Battleground, so that's one company to look up. But for Larry, I find your story about sponsored and branded content really interesting. What do you see as for the future of television, especially with all of the ad upheaval and all of the things that are taking place in the advertising and the ad market? Where do you see the potential for more branded entertainment, sponsored entertainment that's tied into some type of a brand or a product play that isn't traditional advertising?
Well, excuse me. First, digital domain licenses the holographic content. They're not the patent owner, so they license the patents, and they're doing some great stuff. I agree, but they're using other people's patents. On the sponsorship and stuff, the U.S. is kind of stuck in its old ways, and everybody's still fighting to hold on to what was as opposed to realizing what's going to be. And that's one of the reasons I choose to be out of the country, because it's a lot easier to get through that. So particularly when you look at emerging markets, you look at Asia, you look at Africa and stuff where consumer habits are not quite as entrenched as they are here or in Europe. Tremendous opportunity for coming up with new ways of bringing brand messages to consumers, because they're leapfrogging technology, they're leapfrogging old habits and stuff like that. So we look at Africa as the next frontier for consumerism and innovation in brand development via media.
And manufacturing.
And manufacturing of shoes.
Well,
And I think also regulation. I mean, having been with Maker Studios and have some experience in social marketing, the regulations have gotten only more tight in the last 4 years. And companies being owned by Disney, for example, Disney is a company that wants to be, 2 steps ahead of the interpretation of the rule. So it's gotten kind of really tight to do that kind of marketing that Larry does in other regions in the U.S.
let's take one more question if there are any. Nobody. All right, well, I'll go with one more then.
Oh, well, good.
Is there one? All right. David?
As long as you're last. One subject that you haven't discussed, and I assume maybe by not discussing it, you don't think it's going to go anywhere, is broadcast is now pushing a new standard called ATSC 3.0. Sinclair is very keen on it. They think it's going to open the door to a whole lot of additional content and access to the internet, blah, blah, blah. Do you see anything happening there? Is that realistic, or it's going to be like the local DTV standard?
Yeah, Justin, I think this is up your alley.
Yeah, I think it will affect how we all consume content. I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier with radio, and a lot of cell phones don't even have an FM receiver. ATSC is being built with mobile in mind. So if the tuner is being built into cell phones, more devices, I'm not going to go into cars of how that might affect the driver or driverless experience. But as ATSC rolls out, and especially with Korea, to touch on briefly, they're planning to try to get ATSC 3.0 out with the Olympics in the winter. So I think it's going to be something that we will see. Like HDTV, it'll take time for the old architecture systems to be decommissioned, but it is something I see as a standard of the future.
2 weeks ago, David, I went to an SMPTE Hollywood chapter monthly event over at the Linwood Dunn, and there was a guy, I can't think of his name, Dr. Richard somebody, who gave a really good presentation. If you ping me later, the whole evening was ATSC 3.0. So if you ping me later, I have some of his information. I'll be glad to share it with you. I think standards still need to be developed on it. It's not quite there, but I think it's going to have some possibilities. At NAB last year, there were a whole bunch of different, I shouldn't say a whole bunch, handful of different companies showing early stage ATSC. And with that, I want to say thank you to everybody. Join me in thanking the panel.